What's going on, Grant?
Not much, Sean. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I was
I
a,
like
I
the
was a long,
logo.
I was like a long music intro, right? We have to change the music on that and
That's pretty solid. I mean, it kind of settled you down, the whole thing.
get you ready to go live. Well, look, we just want to welcome everybody. This is my first live stream here on social, and I'm super excited that I got somebody here that's pretty special to me. I haven't known Grant a very long time. But Grant's been, a great partner and a super sharp guy running a huge technology organization within the community we live in. So I felt it fit to bring him on for our first one. And we got a long list of people we're going to be bringing on and interviewing and talking through, different things, business strategy, sales strategy, technology, life in general. So I'm super excited for our first one to have you, Grant. And I'm pumped to talk to you today about your role and kind of how we met. Just so everybody knows, Grant and I met about 3 years ago.
Close to that.
Yeah, close to 3 years ago. Grant was new in his role as the director of IT for St. Tammany Parish. A good friend of ours, Mike Noto, introduced us. We had a conversation about security for the Justice Center.
It was.
And we did our first project together. Got a huge camera project underway for St. Tammany Parish. We had a few bumps throughout the road, but we got it done. Having to deal with jails and antiquated software that threw us for a loop, and I guess the joys and aches and pains of any large scale project.
Wires that had kind of melted into the pipes. I mean, we had a lot of problems there. And that was my first project as a director here, the whole major project. So it was one of those things. I'd reached out to Mike and I'm like, hey man, I'm just getting started out. You have some advice for me? And now he introduced me to you. And I think the product you showed us, I mean, man, just lights out. It was exactly what we needed. It was a little bit longer than I had thought, but I mean, none of us knew the building. None of us knew what was going on. 20-year-old building. So it was, not old.
How many square feet's that building? I mean, it's a big ass building too.
It is. It is. And it's a maze. So it's a little bit like a hospital when you go through. So it's not like, kind of a standard building. The middle looks real open, but it's the size, man. There's a lot of pathways and portals to get in and out of places.
Yes. And just so everybody knows, Grant has a extensive background in the tech space, coming from the federal side. And is now on the local side. So we'll definitely get him talking about his background and his history on what he does. It's interesting though, Grant, because even talking to people that are around you within the parish, other directors and even Mike, President Cooper, they love the work that you're doing over there, man. And I think that you had a tall mountain to climb coming in from such a stagnant technology department into having to create a ton of change across the board. So why don't you talk through that? Like, what was it like taking that role, walking in? How many employees do you have today?
Yes, so we've got 16 employees in the department. We've added one additional since I've been here. We're looking at a couple more. Just cyber wise, I mean, cyber is just such a big thing. We just need more and more people in addition to other products we put in place. But when we got here, I remember I told the guys, I'm like, all right, our server equipment's, I think 3 months in, right after Ida, one of my guys tells me, hey, our phone system expires in October. I'm like, man, that's like, 2 months away. And he's, into October, we got to replace it. So I started kind of working on that. And as we start digging in, I'm like, okay, well, both of our data centers, all the equipment in there is expiring. Everything in all of our network closets. I mean, it's like we came in and I had an idea things had been, stagnant, like you're saying, but it wasn't. I didn't realize it till I was in here the extent. And man, this group of guys I've had, I've lost I think 3 since I got here. I came in, I challenged them. I said, we are going to spend 3 years on a full sprint. We're going to replace everything. We're going to schedule it out. We're going to get it done. And I think we replaced the last phone last week. So nice. I mean, we've now turned everything over in a little bit under 3 years.
Yeah, it's not bad, man. I mean, tackling a large phone system implementation is a challenge, especially doing an upgrade too. I mean, doing an upgrade on the software, I can tell you, I cut my teeth in that space. in doing that. That's where we started with in telecom, was in the voice space, and
Yeah.
voice is unforgiving, right?
It is. And it was kind of funny because also at the same time we're putting in new equipment, and I'm like, okay, why have we put in physical equipment again? So it was kind of like I rolled the dice a little bit. I'm like, we're going to virtualize this thing. So I got on the phone with our vendor that was selling us the hardware, Dell. I was like, I need 3 examples of people that have virtualized a Cisco phone system, and they gave me three people. I talked to their directors. We kind of worked out what the problems were, where the challenges were, and we really implemented it seamlessly. The back end phone system was replaced in a couple of months. Like I said, the phones, there's 1,500 phones. It took a little while to get everyone replaced and set up, and
Yeah, well, you got it. I mean, just when you think about it, and it's funny you say that. I'll never forget when we did the Superdome install. The Superdome in the arena. It was during football season. We had to transition that system within a certain time frame. We had to work in between WrestleMania, football season, like all the different logistics that went into that, and like just thinking about unboxing phones, taking a phone out of the box, putting the stand on it, taking the covering off for it, and getting it ready to go get deployed. That alone, I think that install was like 2,800 phones. So just that alone of trying to just get them unboxed is like a full-time job on the job site. Just somebody standing there unboxing equipment.
And you really, when it's funny when you account for IT projects, a lot of times we fail for that physical aspect of it, of physically putting things in. And that you're right. I mean, that was a big part of it, was actually going through unboxing them. We actually got carts for our guys, so each building had its own cart.
That's what we did. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the move. It's just okay. Just put, we're going to fill up this department to go on this cart, go deliver them. We got it deployed out, and we kind of a assembly line. It's really, how you just get it done.
That's the way to do it. Just attack it and get in, and then of course miss spots and buildings with the size scale you are, and just go back, and eventually it turns up, right? Somebody turns up and says, "Hey, I never got a phone," and a phone gets deployed.
So we tried to do it kind of in off hours when things were kind of slowing down. And the first call I got was from a judge who was trying to hold a mediation in his office, and he goes, "Where's my conference phone?" It's the first thing we missed. I'm like, of course it's going to be a judge.
Of course it's a judge, right? Of course, right. Well, good. So why don't you tell us, so what got you into tech? I know that where you came from prior to here, I don't even think you and I have ever even gotten that deep in your career, and kind of what drove you into doing and liking technology. So why don't you start with like where you went to school and kind of what happened after that?
Yeah, sure. So I went to UNO.
Okay.
My degree is actually in business with a minor in accounting and marketing. I interned with an IT company. It was supposed to be in accounting. When I got there, they didn't have a computer for me. This is 1998. Not everyone had computers, but they had this big wall of broken computers. And in college, I actually built computers for people. So I'm like, I'm going to just take one of these broken ones and start kind of, cannibalizing these things for parts. So I built my own machine. And then I was like, you got like 30 machines here. So then I built a classroom, because it was a classroom. It was a company that did Oracle training. So I built another classroom and upgraded their computers in the classroom. And I'm like, I kind of like this. Like, this is kind of what I want to do. And since I was graduating with business, they said, look, we're going to put you in our new Miami office. You run the Miami office and just keep things going. So I was actually doing sales and doing and running the education center. That was my first job in Miami. That's where Bruce was born, in Miami. So I was there for a little bit, and we had a child very quickly. Talked to my wife, and we wanted to move back home to Slidell, where we're from. So the first job that they called back was actually it was a contractor job with the Navy. So I was like, well, this will be interesting, So the first thing I do is gotta get, they send me this paperwork. You got to get a clearance. I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'm getting that. So we go through, end up being the sysadmin, database administrator, web developer for this little program called JLIS, which was the Joint Air Logistics System. I was pretty uneventful, but I think in 2002, for the 1-year anniversary of September 11th, we had to deploy our new release. So I had to go to Japan and Bahrain and Italy, just go to all these sites and basically bring in new machines. Because back then it wasn't virtualized, it wasn't really web-based, everything had to be physical. So my job was to configure all these servers, get everything set up a backup schedule, deliver them to the site for air logistics, because we were preparing for war at the time. So I was actually in war zones dropping servers. That was my first couple of years. So in 2005, that same program, JLIS, I was still with them. Katrina hit. this air logistics program, which was all air logistics for the entire DoD, we were in charge of all the cargo planes. So all the planes that were coming in bringing supplies, and all the planes that were leaving taking people out, that was us. That's what I did for Katrina. 18 hours a day for 3 weeks. Ended up being about 6 months total.
Unloading planes.
I was in Fort Worth working on the system that did it. So I'm going to call. 29 years old. I'm on a call with 3 admirals every morning talking about how many people do we get out, how many supplies went in, what's going on with this plane. One day we're working in a hangar. So one day I'm walking in and there's a C-40 and it's got this yellow tape all around it. I'm like, why is there yellow tape on this plane? Like, we're trying to get all these planes up and moving constantly. Again, they found a crack pipe in the back. So they have to test every soldier in the front to see if, they test positive. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the crack pipe did not come from the sailors. Probably from one of the evacuees, but there was it was just crazy. I mean, it was a very crazy time.
That's insane.
So then I was there another year after Katrina. A job came up with the Department of Defense supercomputing group. So I spent 5 years with that group. It was pretty cool. I led it was the first Oracle Real Application Clusters database, which is kind of a high availability. That's their high availability solution. And we had to replicate data across 6 sites, which at the time it was about 2 terabytes of data replicated across the entire world. So all the metadata for everything in the supercomputers got replicated. It was the first time it ever been done. So I built a team. We got everybody together. And it's kind of funny because you're doing something that hadn't been done. And there are people that are very good at their job. But when you tell them, hey, we're going to do this, they're looking through books. And I'm like, man, that's not in a book. Like, we're breaking ground here. We're going to be on the phone with Oracle, with the manufacturer of this tool, trying to figure out where are the limits. So it's funny. So you got some people we brought in that just didn't work, and we had to rotate through a couple of people before we got people that really kind of saw that vision of no, we're going to do this, and it's going to be groundbreaking. And I mean, it was when we finally got up and running. I mean, it was one of those things you're like, wow, this is just amazing that we got this done. Data's replicating, it's moving. It was a fun thing to do. So I left there, went to after 5 years, I went to work for a Navy data center, and the Navy data center's job was to consolidate data centers. So when I first started working with the DoD, you'd have data centers. What's that?
It's a big pain in the ass too.
It was, yeah, man. They had all these rules, but they would have cubes. So in the middle of like a cube farm, you've had 1 or 2 cubes. That was a server cube. Like, not a server room, no air conditioning. I mean, it was just plugged into the to the cube wall. I mean, no concern. And we actually had a fire in a cube at one point. But that's kind of the world. It was this kind of chaotic site. So when I came back, they were consolidating to get away from that. So everyone realized, hey, we can't run things this way. So they consolidated on 6 different data centers. I was working at one of them, and my job was like a technical project manager. So I would go in and I would meet with these programs and say, okay, you have 6 Linux computers. They're doing these functions. I'm going to come over here. We're going to break it up. It's now going to be 12 Linux computers. So I get it all set up, kind of get things programmed, just hand over to them. Okay, here's your keys to your environment. That was my job there for 4 years. I got done with that, and I went into another Navy program as the authoritative data environment. It was all of the Navy's data warehouses, and they wanted to consolidate them into one single data lake. And they were trying to basically have some forethought into loading ships and getting things ready on a long-term basis. So you could say, with a high level of accuracy, this person who comes from a single parent home, who grew up in this area with this level of income, he's going to enlist at 18 and he's going to stay in. He's going to enlist 2 more times. He'll get these skills on these ships, and we expect him to leave within 8 years. So they
was doing like forecasting on their career path.
Yeah, the beginning of kind of that AI forecasting, trying to do predictive analysis. So that's basically was one of their big goals. And I ended up being the program manager for that. I got in there. I've been there a few months, and the program had been around a little bit longer, but they ran into a security problem. So they had a problem. They need the security access information pulled into their system from another system that didn't trust them. So I was having to pull the data in, bring it into our system, do that security analysis, and get accounts set up on the fly. So we'd deactivate accounts, instantaneously. So it was a little weird thing we had to do, because normally you just kind of exchange that information. They didn't trust us because, for whatever reason. So it caused a few more hoops. When I got done, I turned it over to another developer, and they asked me to lead the program because I guess I'd been successful there, and we had implemented something to let the program carry on. So I led that for a couple more years. That went to a 2.0 phase, and I transitioned to the Navy's HR system. When I was there, we got a mandate that we are going to go to the cloud. So we were told we're going to go to the cloud. So I had to take my team. We had 30 sysadmins, database administrators, and we basically did a lift and shift into the cloud with 450 EC2 instances. It was 252 terabytes. I mean, just enormous system. We lifted and shifted it. I spent the next year kind of adopting a lot of Amazon processes. So it's okay. We didn't have any cost savings at first. And I told them what the expenses were going to be.
Yeah, you're probably going to spend more on the front end, right?
Yeah. So I told them, like, look, we can cut expenses like 30% right off the bat. Because I really tapped out. I went to the very high end on our CPUs and our memory, because I wanted to make sure once we transitioned over, no one's going to say, well, it's slower or it's not working, whatever. So we went in just, hitting the gas hard, and we dialed it back slowly over about 3 months. And then we started adopting Amazon processes. We got costs down almost 40%. And then we had to get RMF accreditation, which I don't know if you've done RMF before.
We haven't.
So that's a Navy's accreditation. We were the first major program that had to go through all of it. So the other programs that had gone in had kind of gotten some waivers and given some, okay, we'll let that go. We were the first one that had to do everything.
So once you got the data migrated is when you had to get the accreditation? Is that how it works?
So we got the data migrated, and they gave us an interim. So we had like 6 months to get accredited. During that 6 months, we had to apply for one extension, and we eventually did get the full accreditation. But it was a lot. It was constant.
Stressful.
It was. You go through these things, and a lot of times you want to say, well, who's done this before? I think you look through what I've done in the past. There's a lot of, well, no one's done that before. So and that's another one of these cases, because we're looking. I'll give me an example. So I looked at an example of someone else that had come in, and I was like, well, how did this diagram get approved? And like, well, it's kind of like a diagram on a bar napkin someone drew with a pen. Well, they had to get through, so they just kind of waved them by. Meanwhile, we're up in Visio drawing up 450 servers, with the network and the VLANs, and I'm like, okay, well, the bar is different for us, so we had to jump every hurdle, and we did.
Well, people don't realize, I mean, when you're dealing with tech, it can be extremely stressful, right? Because of small, simple changes that you make, break other processes and other things that go on, and you can't stop. It's kind of like, I like to reference it back to like medicine, because when you think about surgery, right? Like once you start, like you really can't stop.
Yeah.
And it's the same function for us. I mean, you got to have an exit plan. I always have learned for years that, expect the worst, because it can happen. And you got to have a strategy to get back. We've been through that. We've definitely made mistakes. And went in and thought, oh, this is going to go perfect. And the next thing you know, some application doesn't transition, or something doesn't work properly like it's supposed to. And it's just, I give a lot of credit to a lot of the engineers in the world today dealing with that pressure that a lot of people don't think about. Like there's a ton of pressure if you've ever done the work that you really have to be able to absorb working through that. And there's times where you're right. You're the first one, and you don't know what the outcome is going to be, and you don't know what's going to happen. And you got to just work through it and figure it out. That's why I think they say Google's your friend. Mm-hmm. I built this business on watching YouTube videos and learning how to do this stuff. I'm self-taught. Everything that we've learned from implementing phone systems to understanding SIP and SBCs and networks and routing and servers and all the different environments that go into this tech space. I'm a firm believer that anybody can do it. You just have to have the will and the want, to want to do it. Just like you said, you really didn't have you didn't go to school for. A lot of people ask me all the time, how did you get into this? Because I have a marketing degree with a minor in economics, and I took interest in it and solving people's problems. And I think that's what got me. It still today gets me excited to meet with people and understand where their challenges are and how can we overcome their challenge and fix it. And it's awesome to see when you bring it through tuition and you see the end result.
Mhm.
It's always exciting. Sometimes people look at me like, man, you're like a big nerd, but it's true, man. Like, I never forget years back, Grant, we were doing a big cable restructure for this home healthcare company. And I remember spending all night redoing this racking system. I color coordinated all the patch cords.
Yeah.
I mean, it was beautiful looking. I think I still have the picture on my phone. I never forget grabbing the CEO of the company and walking her over and saying, "Hey, I want to show you, like, everything came out awesome. You're going to be super excited to see this." And like, I remember bringing her in the room and she looked at it and she goes, "Looks great." Just walks off, like, it crushed me. Cause I'm like, man, I just spent the last like 12 hours in this damn room trying to get this stuff working. Cause I couldn't shut them down during the day. Right. Throughout the night, getting this thing, rock solid. I mean, I even went and put like lights in it, made it look really cool.
Yeah.
And she just was like, whatever, and walked off, so.
Well, it's funny. I think most of the time with IT, it's a little bit like your car. People want to get in, just turn the key and let it go. And you take it to the mechanic when you need it, but for the most part, it just needs to run. And that's where most of the people are.
People look at IT like a call center. It's so funny. Like, I've been doing this for 14 years now, and it's like every owner, manager, whoever, they look at this and they're like, "Oh, it's so expensive and this and that." But if you really think about it, it's really a utility at this point at where we are. It's like power, right? Like when you unplug power from your house, what happens, right? You really can't do much, right? There's no lights, you can't cook, and if you think about tech in our space today, like think about how companies make money, how organizations run, even looking at the parish, right? How reliant is the parish on tech?
So we've had a vendor go down. We had a single point of failure, was another. I just saw a lot of single points of failure when I got here. We had a single point of failure. A line went down, and the parish was down for a day. And I mean, the amount of panic that ensued from the phones being down and no internet, and kind of some of those things. We've solved that problem since then, as far as a single point of failure. But yeah, I mean, people don't realize when you're down and you're down hard, all of a sudden everyone realizes, could tell them, okay, look, phones will be up in a couple minutes. You kind of going through this like triage of like, okay, the network's going to be back up. We're not going to have external connectivity. We can talk inside. So you start going through all the different phases of coming up. And it's funny, I told President Cooper during IDA, I'm like, okay, the first thing that people ask is, when's electricity going to be up? I told them the next question is going to be internet. It's funny. Sure enough, it's exactly where we are now. Is there, I want electricity and internet. Those are the first two things people need to continue, living.
Yeah, they got to use it to conduct. I mean, even thinking about how people watch TV today.
Yep.
Like we stream. Everybody streams. So it's if you look at how reliant, organizations are on tech. I mean, it's huge. I always laugh because I'm like, well, if you're not that reliant on technology, let me unplug your router. And like see what happens, because look, and we've seen it with some of the economy is people are wanting to cut back on expenditure and capital projects that go into technology, just really looking at even like life cycle management, right? But then if you look at the outcomes and the sunk costs that come out of that, I think that's where a lot of people miss it. They miss the buck because like you're a ticking time bomb for this thing to go down. And then if it does, like, what is the plan? Like, especially like a server, think about it. You can't just go to Best Buy and buy a physical server and go plug it in and function.
Yeah. Well, you have to have those contracts in place with your vendors. Server goes down, they can ship it, but yes, it's virtualized. And you tell your guys, okay, we've got to virtualize to account for two servers going down at the same time, two physical things. So we can shift and then get have time to get everything back in place. Because there's an expectation of zero downtime. Yeah, and that's the world we live in today. And I remember when I was doing that program with the 6-way replication with the Navy, the first requirement they gave me was 100% uptime. I'm like, that doesn't exist. But we got to I was designed a system that was 9 nines and it was resilient. And we get to it, and they have the front end guys that were on the separate team, and they bring us all into La Jolla, California. And I meet the front end guys, and the front end guys are like, yeah, so we're going to take it down on Saturdays for 8 hours once every 2 weeks. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, if that's the requirement, I just way over engineered this. Because if you can go down for 8 hours, I can go down for 8 hours. Like I can cut three quarters of what we put in place. It's just really funny that people don't realize the cost of that, that 100% uptime.
Oh, it's super expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to tell everybody, you have to tolerate something somewhere. Even looking at cyber, you have to tolerate some risk. You can overcomplicate that sector too. And a lot of the cyber piece is education, right? It's having the right education component with the staff, building a good solid plan. Yes, you need to have some tools and systems to give you data when something is going to happen, right? But having the right plan is key. Backups are critical. Cloud backups critical. I think those components inside of any organization are where people should be thinking of, like, what could go wrong, and if it does, what is our plan to do so?
But your backups really are. I mean, that's key. That's our first line of defense, is just having a good backup that's, hopefully away from everything, that's not sitting in your same data center. But if you don't do backups well, you're not going to recover well. If you don't recover, that's when everybody goes home, not to come back. So recovery is the most important thing you do, and you can't do that without good backups. That's what we get paid. That's where good engineers get paid, is making sure they're able to recover.
Yes. I'll always tell everybody, I'll never forget when we took over one of the local cities here. They had a backup solution, and I remember the week we took it over, they were transitioning the IT director out and us in. The first thing I told one of our engineers, I said, do me a favor. I need you to go ahead and do a full restore on that server off that backup that's going on. The name of the server was Big Bertha too. It's like, I never forget the name. And I never forget Tim walking back in my office and saying, Sean, we can't restore. Yep. And I was like, well, is the data there? He's like, the data's there, but we can't restore. So if something goes wrong, we got to rebuild this thing from scratch. And I'm like, well, how long is that going to take? He's like, at least a week and a half.
Yep. For one server.
One server, right. So I was like, all right. So, obviously walking into the CAO's office and having a conversation around, hey, look, I know you did not want to hit your supplemental budget, but you got to pick. You pick. You tell me what you want to do, and you make a decision from there. You got to mitigate the risk and understand where it was. And look, this server was on its last leg. It was 9 years old. It was time.
You already got to support. I mean, if that thing goes down, it's staying down.
It was done. We literally were in the process of transitioning the data off of that box and lost some drives. The good thing was we had that backup. We could restore some certain components of that environment. But literally the day after we got it transitioned, went live, everybody came up, that server blew up. And it was probably because of the processing power pushing all that data out is what forced it to go.
You just expedited. I mean, that was going to happen at some point.
Yes. I mean, one power surge, and then what? And I think that's what people don't realize is like how important the cloud is. And I think that's where you've done such a good job, man, bringing the parish up to speed. And some of the changes that you've made inside that organization.
Well, I appreciate that.
Obviously, even not just even with us, just a lot what's been going on within the community and some of the efforts that you're putting into the broadband perspective and getting people's internet in their homes. So why don't you talk about that, man? I mean, I think it's pretty awesome that not only are you, handling the internal organization, but you're also being a steward of the community and really pushing back to ensure that we have, broadband efforts across the entire parish. I think that's something important for people to hear on what you've done.
That was a big part of why I wanted to come here. When I came from the federal side, obviously I could have stayed there for quite a while. I was, very successful, but this came up and I was like, I really want to come and take what I've learned and affect my community and really the citizens. I mean, President Cooper came to me and said, look, I want you to look into this broadband money that's out there and what should we do with it? So I looked into it. There's a lot of broadband money for rural areas that just don't have any access to broadband. I think even at the time, 25 down, 3 up, which is what dial up. I mean, that was kind of the standard for broadband. I'm like, man, that is just crazy.
Terrible.
So I told President Cooper, I'm like, look, let's bring in a planner and let's have them give us kind of an idea of what they think we should do, what areas we should attack first, what the right strategy is. So we brought them in. They were here for about 6 months. They met with like most of the ISPs in the area. They met with our directors. They met with President Cooper. They met with business leaders. So they met with a lot of different people to try and understand the community. We gave them some input. They took demographic data from us. So we took speed test data. We took planning records data. So just, what are the zonings and what's land use plans long term? Where's growth going to occur, basically? They broke it down into fiber hoods, which is a Google term. So it's kind of a large area.
I love the term, fiber hood.
It's a great term. It really
Yes,
is.
it
Every
is.
time I tell someone that, they get a smile on their face. I'm like, yeah, man, it makes perfect. When I say fiber hood, you know what that is.
Yes.
So it's just fabulous. So we divide everything into fiber hoods, did priority zones based on speed and based on the zoning and land use plans. In the next couple of days, we're going to release an RFP, our first RFP for construction. So we will be constructing. Hopefully, I think we're looking at probably a 60-day time period to come back. For everyone to kind of go out. We've broken up into small chunks just so it's attainable, and I want to try and release them. I'm releasing them a little bit slowly to make sure I've covered all the bases and we have a good plan and it's going to work for everybody, because we need it to work for the ISPs and the local government. We're using federal matching funds, so there's federal funds out there for governments to go out and do it. As a government, I just don't want to be in the ISP business. I don't think it makes sense when there's already ISPs out there. And we talked to a lot of groups and we said, well, why aren't you in these areas? Why are you not touching this spot? And they came back and said, well, it's because of this. So based on the conversations we had, based on the plan, we came up with the plan that involves a pass-through grant, and it's going to go through, and we're pretty excited about it, man. I think as a parish, this is one of those things that's going to touch citizens and really impact their lives. I mean, when you go from no internet or satellite-based internet to fiber in the ground, I mean, that's a huge life change. And I think that'll, really improve our community and way of life.
It will. I mean, think about it, man. Most people don't realize, I cut my teeth and started another company and have a fiber company. So I know the costs that are associated with the construction and building it out. And it's a long-term investment. When you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, a lot of those carriers, the reason we can't build to those areas is because the return on the investment back, it's just not there. Like, or your areas that you're doing it in, those citizens could never afford to pay what it would cost to recoup the construction for the organization to actually make it profitable, right?
Yeah, the density models just don't work. The density models work, you'd be there. And that was one of my big questions. Okay, we know how to divide up. We understand what makes sense to the ISPs. So what do I need to get you to go into that area? And we got some pretty good answers.
It's awesome you did that too, man. Because look, we work with tons of parishes across the state and even some counties in Texas and Mississippi. But to see someone that comes in as a director, I can definitely tell you, just watching what you've done and your presence in the community, I think that's incredible, man. I'm huge on that, Grant. I love being involved and giving back into the community, my time, money, whatever it may be, volunteering, whatever we can get involved in, we try to get involved in. And I think we should, right? God gave us a talent and ability. We got to be able to put that back out there. And I just think even from your side, I think it's incredible to see someone with a job, right, inside of an organization, but taking it another step. I always call them entrepreneurs. Right. It's okay to be an entrepreneur. I think that's important. I think so many people out there want to be an entrepreneur. And I think that, it's got its good and bad, but you can also be an entrepreneur and be a steward in your community within another organization. And I think they need more people like that out there, Grant. I think that's a testament to you and, your ability. And I think it's awesome. I think it's incredible.
I appreciate that, man. I don't think I've been to a golf tournament or any charity event where there hadn't been a telecom sign somewhere. And you're always out in the community too. But I think if you're going to be a leader and inside of work or anywhere else, you really owe it like I said, God gave you those talents. Literally, if you have those talents, it's to go out and
Yes.
serve humanity. So we
Yes.
should be out in our communities, helping people, doing what we can. And, for me, like when I saw the broadband project, I'm like, that is my opportunity here. And, we don't always get opportunities. I laughed. There was a job I had for a short period of time. It was a little company in Metairie, and they had gotten bought while I was there. And, I felt like, I just wasn't given a chance for the few months I was there. And I was like, man, I've never been somewhere that wasn't given a chance to succeed. So I think when you get those chances, it made me realize, like, you don't always get a chance. So when you get a chance, you got to go grab it and run.
Take the chance. Now be good at what you do. I mean, I laugh, for everybody listening, Grant's son worked for me for a little while. Bruce, who's an incredible salesperson, impressed me out the gate from day one. Different approach, and just was good at what he did. And I knew that Bruce wanted to start his own company. And I was even like talking to Bruce and mentoring him and spending a lot of time with him, teaching him, and he was asking me obviously a lot of questions, and, it always intrigued me to help him and work with him. And then he quit and started his own company, but I'm so proud of him, man. And, I think that's a testament to you, and your abilities. And if you look at Bruce and what he's doing, it's great to watch him on social media, and what he's doing and putting his name out there, and just really going at it. And again, you definitely should be proud, and I think as leaders in any organization, I think it's our job to make sure that we're influencing to get the best out of people. And there's going to be times where you're going to lose people because of that. But one day I'm gonna write a book, and Bruce is gonna be in my book. I told him he can't have his business fail, because I need it to succeed. So I can write about it, and he definitely will succeed, and I know he's going through it. But I think it's awesome. He just had his first child.
So he made me a grandfather this last week.
Yep. So you turned 84 and had a grandchild, right? I joke with Grant because he had a post on Facebook that had his numbers backwards and it had 84 on it. I laughed.
So Bruce did that. He's like, hang on. I saw him do it. And he's like, take a picture. And I'm like, really? So that, you got the whole face and everything.
Your face said it in the background too. So it's good. So yeah, I mean, that's awesome, man. I mean, it's awesome to see him grow as a young, leader. I knew it, from the day I met Bruce that he was going to do that. Obviously I wish he would have stayed longer, but also at the same time, I look back to when I started, I was 24, right? Mm-hmm. I was having my first child. There's something about having a child and owning a business that is super scary and super motivating at the same time, right? Because you really don't have an option to fail. And I think Bruce has that he doesn't have a plan B, and I think that's okay. I think it's okay to not have a plan B. I think too many people want to have a plan B.
So he's lived his whole life that way since he was a child. He's been selling to me since he was 4 years old. So I've seen that salesman come out, and I told him, like, look, I'm not a good salesman. It's like, you are a gifted salesman.
Oh, he's very good at it.
And he
told me the same thing too. When he first got here, I knew I'll never forget the first meeting we went on. He had booked a meeting with St. Margaret Mary, and we went in and we walked in, and I remember sitting in the truck with him, and he looked at me and he goes, "Hey man, I might mess this up, but I know these people, so let me run it." And it was not very common for me to have a new salesperson in the company that didn't want to use me as a crutch and obviously let me do my thing, right? They would open the door, I would go in and do the pitch and work at getting where we needed to go. But he wanted to do it, and I let him do it. And look, he fumbled, but like some of even the questions he was asking in that sales process, like I just knew it. I'm like, I remember coming back and telling Jimmy, I'm like, damn, this dude he's going to be a fucking rock star. Like, he's good at what he does. And I'm super excited to watch him grow, and then just watching him evolve so fast, and it's funny because like we have sales professionals that come in the company all the time, and they'll ask me like, well, how long do you think it'll be before I start making like, real money, 10, 15,000 a month? I'm like, well, that's a loaded question because that's really up to you. And I always tell the story of Bruce, and I'm like, look, this kid came in, put his head down, really learned, really grasped and understood the business side of things. And I think that's what he's so strong in, man. He's got such business acumen. And he's an entrepreneur at heart, right? You could see it. And he couldn't do anything else. Like, and I knew that. Like, I literally sat in a truck with him and told him, like, look, man, like, I don't want you to think that I'm passing you on this manager position, but I think that, like, you're not going to be here. Like, and I know that, like, you're going to quit. And he just looked at me and he's like, well, I'm glad you're saying that, because, I definitely want to start my own business. I said, Bruce, I'll see that, man. I said, don't think that I'm not discounting that. I said, but, we can both be successful together. Let's both make some money. And look, he made me some money. And he made a lot of money working here.
He did
in a very short time frame. And I'm proud of him to take.
But I think more importantly, I mean, you talk about growth, and you help your people grow, and you certainly help Bruce grow. And I think as leaders, it's really important to make sure your people feel like they're not just coming to work and it's not just a paycheck, but they're getting something out of it themselves. So you're not just, telling them, what to do. You're just, okay, well, this is going to help your career. You learn these skills and this is going to improve you as a person. Your managers, you tell them you're going to go lead this group and you're going to solve this problem. And, but it's important to let people grow, which, I mean, you've done well with Intellicom.
And I think, look, it's got its demons too, in the same sense where there's been times in the company where I've wanted it more for the person than they've wanted it. Mm-hmm. And that becomes a challenge too, because I see potential in so many people, that I feel like let loose of their potential, and just don't grasp the fact of, like, yes, it's hard. Yes, you can be great. And look, I've seen so many people blossom here inside this organization and grown into a career here and outside of here, which is great. I'll never forget the first really good guy we had leave. David Freeman left here and got a job at working for NASA. I remember walking in my office and telling me he was quitting. And in the back of my mind, I was super mad. I was super frustrated, right? The selfish in me came out. I'm like, I don't want to lose this guy. But he vetted to me on the job he got and the opportunity that came out of it. And, he sat there and flat out told me, like, Sean, I would have never gotten this opportunity without the training and education that you guys had me do and paid for. So I want you to know, like, I'm extremely thankful for that. And I'm walking in your office to tell you thank you for what you've done. And I kind of had to sit back for a minute, and really think about my response. Because obviously at first I want to be like, you asshole, you're really leaving, but man, he has flourished in that career. He stopped by not too long ago, and it's just great to watch him grow. And it's again, I think as leaders, we're going to have people leave, and they're going to move on into their next career. And I think that's okay. Mm-hmm. I hope everybody stays forever, obviously, right? But at the same time, I think if we can impact young professionals and even, I've had grown men tell me, man, you've been such an inspiration to me. Mm-hmm. And I do push people to try to be their best, because I push myself in that same standard every single day. Like I told you today, Grant, I won't ever ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do. I went and sat. That's why I'm in a really good mood today. I went and sat in the sales office today and was making some outbound calls, just dialing randomly, calling businesses and trying to schedule appointments in front of the sales team. And I just enjoy that so much. It brings me back to my roots. So what got me here and got me into so much success, so if I could give anybody any advice, one thing, don't be afraid to take the leap. Pay it forward, no matter if you're working in an organization or own your own business. Pay it forward for sure, not just within your organization, but within your community. I think that's super important. Get involved, and be a steward in what you can provide. Don't be afraid. You never know who's looking and who's looking up to you. Again, Grant, you've always been great to us, and you've been a joy to watch even in your career and it blossom in what you're doing, so I think that's incredible. You obviously work for local government. You could clearly go make more money in the private sector, and that. But you also look at the impact you get to make in the community, right? I think that's.
I think being able to touch the citizens' lives, being able to impact my home community it's a big deal to me. I mean, that's important. I left, like I said, I sat in a pretty good spot. They kept wanting me to move to DC. I don't want to move out of here. I want to stay here. it was just one of those things. When this came up, a friend of mine asked me, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And I was like, actually, I would. That is something I would love to do, and I do. I love coming
Oh,
to
it's a
work.
great fit for you, man. I mean, again, your experience and again, your ability to be an extrovert too in the community and at the events. I think that's incredible that you actually show up to a lot of these events and you're out and about. I think that's important. I think more people should do that. I preach that inside of my organization to get out and be out there and be visible in the community. And I think that it's so important, man. Even if it's not for your gain, it's for other people's gain and what they can grasp out of you being there. And I think a lot of us forget about that. Paying it forward. I'm just a big component of like,
Mhm.
you pay it forward, man, it comes back tenfold. I would never have thought I'd be in the position I am in today. I was probably the least likely to succeed in high school, right? But
It's most
I,
IT professionals, man.
yes,
That's the industry. It's a lot of people that yeah. There's some smart people. There's some people that did well in school. There's a lot of people that were kind of mediocre students that just like to kind of get on there and mess around and make things work.
yes.
Instant
I mean, I
gratification.
was a C student. I was happy with
Yeah.
C's. If I got C's, I was like ecstatic, And I also look back like applying myself too. I think it really boils down to, um, are you super interested in it? Because I find myself when I get interested into something, and I obsess of it and I can't stop. When we got into doing cyber, I became obsessive with it. I went and paid, $45,000 to do an audit on Intellicom so I could see like what they did,
Yeah.
and what they look for and the different gaps and all the different things. I saw a post today and it said, if you're working with your IT vendor and they cannot produce a third party audit on themselves, you should probably fire them. And I agree because the roofer's roof always leaks. I don't care how many smart people you have. We found gaps in our own organization, and
Yeah.
we're planning on doing another audit for next year. We put it back in the budget to do it again because I think it's important. It's just like auditing financials, right? You should do it to have an understanding. So I think that for those listening that have a vendor, make sure your vendors are eating their own dog food too, and
So so
ask
there
for
so
the documentation.
there are companies now that you can pay, and they came to one of them came to me a couple months ago, and they say, "Oh, we'll check on all your vendors, and we'll let you know their holes too." So they're doing like a soft scan external, and like, hey, what's open, what's exposed on them, which is
Smart.
it's interesting. So before you start working with the vendor, you can call and say, "Hey,
That's how you get hacked, man. That's what people don't realize. Like, you're not just at risk on your own stuff; you're at risk on who's connected to you too.
well," and that's
Um,
so I've been involved in some incidents where someone's come into us sideways. So yeah, we were protected, everything was great, but you have one connection out to somebody who wasn't. So to me, that kind of information where you say, well, what are my vendors like? Like who are they using? What technology are they using? Like, oh, they've got Move It. Maybe they should move to something else, or just kind of not expose that. Things like that you kind of it's good to know, and it's good information.
yes,
And
yes,
we really all of us should be having that information on who we're dealing with.
yes. Even I know when we did the Tammany Talk stuff, even looking at it from a consumer standpoint, people should be changing their passwords and doing the things necessary because it's super super important. Um, I try to preach it every day, man. People probably think I'm crazy, because I'm telling them what happens. And it's all about me. I had a client call me literally this week in the healthcare space, and she asked me, she goes, "Hey, I thought my contract that I had with you guys had IT." I'm like, "Well, no, we're just have managed network and managed voice. But you definitely need to get an IT contract because I can assure you, you're probably violating HIPAA, which the odds of them getting caught up in that are probably slim, right?" But I even told her, I said, "I do believe that you have risk involved, and how painful would it be for the business to not be able to operate without technology because of a breach, and
Yes.
in the lawsuit that could happen because you have people's personal information. Like, people don't look at that big perspective on things, right? They look at like, oh, well, what could happen? They don't want to hack me, but it's
Well, that's funny. That's one of the things that, like, when you're with the Department of Defense versus like corporations, everything's risk based. But with the corporation, you say, okay, this data has this monetary value. When you got the personnel records of the military, there's no real value that cannot get out. So it's
No.
not like well, here's what's going to happen if it does. It's like, no, man, this cannot. We have to do everything we possibly could. It's a different mindset that you get into, and it's that kind of. It's almost like that zero trust mindset that I'm not. We're gonna lock everything down. No one's getting it. It was just. It was. I think more businesses are now starting to take that same approach. I think it's
They are. They are. No, they are. They are. I mean, look, I could tell you, it's accelerated our business at just what's been going on in the market. It's definitely brought us a lot of business. Pains in people's organizations have brought us a ton of opportunity. And I don't see it slowing down. I see it expanding more and more and more. When you look at the landscape and what's out there, I don't see it changing anytime soon. Here in the near future.
No, I think the MSP space, I think it's going to be more and more utilized. It's one of those things like when I first got here, no one used MSPs and was kind of like, no, we're not going to do that. And it's like, well, it may make sense in certain scenarios. There's scenarios where you want someone externally looking just to make sure.
And co-managed is such a huge thing now, and I try to tell everybody, you can have your own internal. I talked to a guy today and it's what he told me. I have my own internal IT department. I said, that's okay. We work with several organizations that have an internal IT department. That's not a problem whatsoever. Like we work well. I actually like co-manage better because you're dealing with individuals that actually understand the tech, and it's much easier conversations.
And you usually have the guy who implemented everything on the phone. So yes. Like right now, we're looking at tearing everything down and rebuilding VLANs and networks and all that. And you look at all those things. When you have the people that built it there with you, and like, well, here's why this was done this way. You kind of get some of the history, and you're like, okay, well, I get that, but here's what we can do.
Yes.
But yeah, to be able to have someone there that knows it is invaluable.
Absolutely. And having the person on the ground doing a lot of the day-to-day is extremely important. Yeah. I think that right there is much easier for us as a managed service organization to manage as well. And the good thing is even if you look at like failover, we work with tons of local parishes and municipalities within the state. And I'll tell you, they've enjoyed working with us in a sense that we have different resources for different aspects. Brandon and John over at Ascension, those guys have been incredible. They run a great IT organization over there at Ascension Parish, and then Brandon's done great things. You and Brandon are very similar in what y'all are trying to do. Jeb at Jefferson Parish, runs a type ship. He treats it like its own. That's a huge monster. And all those organizations outsource and work as well as have internal. So it's okay, for people to do that. I think people have a misconception of that and say, oh, well, I can just hire internally. And I'm like, well, you probably should have some internal as well, depending on your size. And you should probably outsource some too, so, and really building layers. Because if you think about IT, you can't know everything. Like you never will.
Well, and things move so quickly. So, I mean, where does it make sense? To me, like when we start doing migrations, does it make sense for me to take my limited resources and invest them in learning how to upgrade? No. Or just bring someone in who does that, who does upgrades, and then say, okay, you learn the new technology, but he's going to handle the upgrade.
Yes. It's not worth it. It's not worth trying to, it's kind of like doing your own taxes, right? Like I'm sure I can log in and do it, but does that make sense? No. And it just,
I'll give you the input. You go do it.
Does AI play a part, a potential vulnerable part? Yes.
I think that one's crazy.
I think that right now AI plays a huge potential vulnerable. If you think about what happened at the casinos, they were able to call in, mimic the IT director, the voice, and reset his multi-factor authentication and then get in. So even we have had to think about processes and procedures on making that change. I don't know if you've done some of that internally, Grant, on your side, because you got, what do you have, 1,500 employees?
So we have a liaison system. So the liaison actually sits within each department. There's one person in each department that basically identifies. So that's the only person that's able to open tickets with the help desk. So they had to physically see the person, touch the person in order to do those things. That's the same concept that we used at the Navy. So I just basically put those same procedures when we got here that have that. Here's what you have to do. Here's the steps. If you don't see the person, it's not getting done.
Well, I think it's getting and understanding the scenarios too. When you look at social today and the ability to create accounts
Mhm.
and use AI to communicate. I mean, think about it. AI is learning how you communicate as an individual.
Yes.
And then if it has that data, could it not use that back against you? I truly believe that AI is going to have some downfall to it, as well as I think, Eric, another good thing to think about with AI is a lot of people are utilizing AI as a crutch to get through things, and it's not 100% accurate. So I think you got to be very cautious. I think there's a lot of good that come out of AI, and I'm very optimistic about where it's going with it. We're definitely going to get some negative because of it too. You always got to remember every positive, there's some form of
Yeah.
negative that can occur out of it.
Well, I think you'll be able to throw it a snippet of code and say, "Give me 10 variations." So now your semantic, old school algorithm matching devices that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
So
right,
then,
you're right. Zero trust. I mean, that's
yeah,
the way to do it. If you just, and a lot of people think zero trust is a system. Zero trust is a process, and it's implementing a zero trust policy. Yes, you can use things like Threat Locker to create a zero trust application platform, and we've done that. We do that for all of our clients. But at the same time, zero trust goes down to your policy and the way you function as an organization.
well, it breaks that silver bullet mentality. There's no silver bullet. There's no one. Put this product in and don't worry about it. I mean, it's layers, and the zero trust is a great model to use. I think that's probably the best model we have right now. But yeah, I mean, I get that a lot of, oh, I'm implementing this. This is going to solve our problem. It's like, nah, man, that's going to solve a problem, maybe.
There's still vulnerabilities. You're never ever going to future proof that 100%. It's impossible. I try to tell everybody, like, for me, I've had a lot of people ask me, I want to be 100% bulletproof. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
We all right, fire everybody that works there, and have one computer not plugged into a network that has no outside access. I mean, it's impossible. Like it doesn't exist anymore. So I think education and staying up to par on what's going on in the community is critical. And I'm talking the IT community as a
Yeah.
whole, looking at it from a big picture, right?
And I think that's key. Is I think it's easy to sit back and think I got smart people, we can figure it out. But it's really that community of people. One thing I like with the parish, all the parish IT directors with the large parishes, we have a group chat. We talk and we'll ask like, hey, who's used this? Who's done that? So it's invaluable to have that kind of resource where you can just lean on people and say, hey, it's like for us, public record request is big. So it's like, what are you using for that? Like, how are you responding? How are you tracking metrics? Those kind of things. It just having resources like that is great.
Yeah, network. I think a lot of people
Absolutely.
don't network enough inside their space. Look, I'm friends with tons of other CEOs of my competitors. Me and Don Monaster with General Informatics, we talk on a regular basis, and we've even taken clients from each other, and we laugh and we joke. But at the end of the day, I think that's critical to lean on other people. Why would you no one knows it best, and we're not doing anything proprietary, right? It's about service and service. And, he runs a tight ship and an organization, and we do as well. But at the same time, I think we learn from each other. And I think that's so smart, Grant, to have those resources. I remember talking to Jeb, and Jeb was looking at a new system to run on the back end, and they were looking at Munis. So he said, I said, man, call Brandon, call Grant. They're on it.
Yeah.
They'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, and I think that's critical. I know we're coming up on time here. I know we're hitting right at an hour. But Grant, look, man, I appreciate you getting on this, man. Thank you for doing our first one. I think today was a success. I'm going to be doing this on a regular basis and bringing folks on. I'm definitely bringing Bruce on for sure, because I definitely want to.
That's gonna be a long one, man. Both of y'all like to talk.
Yes, it will be. So, but I'm excited to bring them on, man, and have some conversations. I got some really big CEOs that are going to be coming on, telling their story and talking about what they've done and how they built their business. So, I intrigue everybody to listen in and chime in. If you have questions, you can feel free to reach out. Grant, if people got questions for you, how do they reach out to you? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so they can reach me on LinkedIn. It's WG Black 3 is my handle. And then, parish government. I mean, anyone in the community, you can call IT department and you can get to me pretty quickly. It's like,
don't be afraid to ask Grant questions. He's a smart guy.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks for having me on your first show, man. That's exciting. It means a lot.
No, I appreciate that, man. It's been exciting today. Again, thank everybody for joining, and we look forward to next time. Y'all have a great day.